Iran is posing a direct terror threat to South Africa, and recent events indicate this. While many people view the current Middle East conflict as a faraway issue that has very little implication on South Africa, this is becoming increasingly less true. And the reason why I say this is because, unfortunately, it seems that Iran and its proxies are increasingly interested in spreading their influence worldwide, and South Africa is no exception. Now, before we get into this, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? It's entirely free, and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button below the video. If you would like to support the channel and enjoy some additional perks, you can do so by becoming a Power Club member. All you have to do is click on the join button below. Now let's get into this. So those of you who follow the channel will be familiar with the axis of resistance. For those of you who may not know what this is, it is a network spearheaded by Iran, or specifically the Iranian government and the IRGC. So the way that this network works is that Iran is the head of the snake, and they have proxies around the Middle East, and these include the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, PMF in Iraq, amongst others. What's also really important to note, and probably even more relevant to South Africa and other countries, is the fact that this axis of resistance isn't only limiting their activities to the Middle East, but rather looking to spread them worldwide. And South Africa could be a victim of this if action is not taken. And here's why. A few days ago, a very worrying report came out of England following certain attacks that took place there. So as we see here, the British police are eyeing Iran involvement after 3 London synagogues were targeted in arson attacks. So 2 teenagers were arrested in connection with the arson attack, which is actually the 3rd within days on Jewish targets in the city. No one was injured at Kenton United Synagogue after police said that a bottle with some sort of accelerant was thrown through a window. A fire was extinguished before it could do significant damage. Police offered few details about the men arrested beyond their ages, 17 and 19. There was emerging evidence from the attack and others in recent days that may have been conducted in exchange for payments from Iran, which has said that it would strike targets in response to the United States and Israel war against it. So we've seen a pattern. Matt Dukes, the police force's deputy commissioner, said to the BBC on Monday. He said there were 15 arrests related to incidents targeting the Jewish community in recent weeks, and most appeared to be taking cash, as it looks like quick and easy money, to stage an attack. A new group, the Islamic Movement of the People of the Right Hand, has claimed many of the attacks, including the most recent one. It appears to be Iran-linked and says it is behind arson and explosives targeting synagogues across Europe. So many might not be surprised by what's going on in the UK, given that they've had a migrant crisis as well as Islamic influence and anti-Semitism for quite a few years now. However, there are other countries who are less exposed to this sort of a track record that are also being affected now. So Israel announced the exposure of an Iranian terror network targeting Israelis abroad. And this specific article deals with Azerbaijan. Now, for those of you who might not know, Azerbaijan borders Iran. It is not exactly a Middle Eastern country, but they do have a Persian shared origin with Iran, and it is a Muslim country, specifically Central Asian. However, it seems that Azerbaijan, who has actually done very well to prevent radical Islamism from infiltrating, is also susceptible to these kinds of attacks. So it explains here how in recent months, Israel exposed an Iranian terror network that targeted Israeli officials and assets around the world. So it explains how the network was uncovered following the arrests of several members of the network in Azerbaijan in March. So Azerbaijan said that it foiled a series of terror attacks from Iran on its territory, including ones targeting the Israeli embassy in Baku, a synagogue, and Jewish community leaders. At least 7 Azeri nationals were arrested in connection with the probe. Azerbaijan's state security service said that it prevented terrorist acts and intelligence operations in Azerbaijan organized by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Also amongst the planned targets were the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, which runs through neighboring Georgia and Turkey and carries around a third of Israel's oil imports. So, of course, this attack could have been looking at targeting Israeli oil imports. However, it could also just be a general attack on Azerbaijan's infrastructure. And so one doesn't entirely know if everything is targeted against Jews or if it could also be against locals as well, given that Azerbaijan, amongst other countries, are not supporters of Iran to any extent. So Middle Eastern Gulf neighbor of Iran, specifically the UAE, has also been victim to Iranian infiltration and had this to say. So it explains here how UAE state security authorities announced that they dismantled a terrorist cell and arrested its members over alleged involvement in covert activities aimed at undermining national unity and destabilizing the country. So the statement from the Emirates news agency explained that investigations revealed that the group had plans to carry out organized terrorist and sabotage operations on state territory, and that this network is linked to Iran's Wilayat al-Faqih. Investigations also found that members of the group adopted extremist ideologies that posed a threat to internal security. They were said to have conducted recruitment and mobilization activities through secret meetings as part of a coordinated plan with external entities to gain access to sensitive sites. And what's really interesting here is that it seems to have been a propaganda movement whereby they were seeking to spread misleading ideas amongst Emirati youth and recruit them in support of external loyalties. The activities also included attempts to incite against the state's foreign policy and internal measures, as well as efforts to portray the country negatively. Now, of course, the UAE is not a Jewish country. It's an Arab Muslim country. However, what's important to understand about them is that they're very much Western aligned. We also know that the United Arab Emirates entered into the Abraham Accords, whereby they normalized relations with Israel. And so effectively, they've been an Israeli ally. And interestingly enough, they have faced more missiles from Iran than Israel itself during the war, making it the country that's actually faced the biggest threat from Iran since the ongoing US-Israel-Iran war started at the end of February. Unfortunately, many people are of the opinion that somehow the current war is what sparked Iran to finally decide to engage in these kind of terror activities. And unfortunately, there are many people on social media blaming Israel and the US for what Iran is doing, which is actually wrong. You see, before any of this even started, and I'm talking months before the current war, Iran was already plotting to do these kinds of terror infiltrations across the world. And here we have an official press release from the Prime Minister's office in Israel explaining this. So as explained here, following a lengthy investigation led by the Mossad for intelligence and special operations, and thanks to cooperation with European intelligence and law enforcement agencies, terrorist infrastructures built by Hamas with the aim of carrying out attacks against Israeli and Jewish targets have recently been thwarted. So what's really important for us to remember is how Hamas is a proxy of Iran. And so, yes, while of course this is specifically Hamas's doing, all of these sorts of terror cells across the world are at the end of the day spearheaded by Iran and their ideology. This isn't happening in isolation. It's happening as part of the Iranian axis of resistance. Continuing with the article, it explains how law and enforcement authorities in Europe, including in Germany and Austria, have conducted a series of complex counterterrorism operations, resulting in the arrest of terrorist operatives and the discovery of weapons caches intended for use by terror cells to harm innocent people on the day the order is given. In a special operation by the Austrian State Security and Intelligence Directorate in Vienna last September, a weapons hideout containing handguns and explosive devices was uncovered and confiscated. The investigation of those involved revealed that the items hidden in the cache belonged to Hamas operative Muhammad Naim, the son of senior Hamas political bureau member abroad, Bassem Naim, who is close to Khalil al-Khaya, the Hamas leader in the Gaza Strip. The involvement of the organization's leadership from Qatar in promoting terrorist activities is not being exposed for the first time, even though the movement's senior officials have repeatedly denied it publicly as part of their effort to protect the image of the Hamas organization in the eyes of international public opinion. As we should remember, Qatar is one of the sponsors of Hamas. They've given about $1.5 billion to the organization in Gaza. And what's also important to note is that Qatar regularly cooperates with Iran by providing them diplomatic immunity and having many officials work with them. They often seem to be sort of Iran's negotiators when it comes to ceasefire agreements. We've seen how a lot of ceasefires for them, as well as other proxies such as Hamas, have been conducted by Qatar. So there's really no surprise there. Now, of course, this sort of infiltration, these sorts of operations haven't yet been exposed in South Africa. But it's important for us to remember this image right here, which is of the Hamas office in Cape Town. What's also important for us to remember is how not only does the ANC seem to have pretty decent relations with Iran, or specifically the embassy in Pretoria, deciding to have a lecture at the University of Pretoria. We've also seen how there have been Gazans who recently arrived in South Africa on a charter flight, or specifically 2 flights actually, with border security doing little to no background checks on who these people are. Now, of course, they could be innocent, but they could also be dangerous. We just don't know. And this gives us more cause for concern. With Iran already plotting attacks around the world, we do not know what kind of a security situation awaits in South Africa. Unfortunately, what needs to be addressed is the fact that these kinds of people are already within the country, and so law enforcement officials need to be on high alert. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you found it informative, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.